This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today.
Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Ensign's Chair, and this is another update on the Big Bird 3D printed golden armor bird of prey. And this episode I'm going to pretty much go into some of the painting I'm doing on detailing the model. I've got part of it done right here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the lighting kit that I'm going to use on this. So let's just get right into it. Give me a minute, I'll put you on the bench, we'll get to work. Alright guys, so we can see my completed cannons and wingtips here, and I've got the modification that I made for adding the shield onto the cannon. And by the way, I'm honored that this was incorporated into the model now. So when you buy this model, this 3D print file, it now comes with the shield included on it, and with the tube, the barrel of the cannon already hollowed out, so you can just add a light in there. So I was honored that they included this, and I had said that I would make that modification available to anybody that needed it, unless they included that in the file, and they did at this point. So if you need that modded file, you will have to go through Golden Armor and get that file now, because for one, I can't verify that whether or not you purchased the model, and I would rather stay with their terms of use, which is that you can have the modded files as long as you have purchased the full set of files. So anyway, that being said, I've got the this is all primed up. You can see my SMD will do a real good job of lighting up that cannon there. And I had already went over, I did a separate video on painting the bird of prey, and but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go through the steps with you. So I've got this primed. They've been allowed to sit and dry for, actually I usually allow a couple days, but in this case these have been sitting and drying for a couple weeks now, because I haven't been able to get to working on this in a while. So it's ready for the next step. The next step is going to be, what I'm going to do is do a little bit of a layer to this. And I'm first going to put a coat of brown, this brown ceram coat. It's called brown iron oxide. And I'm going to put a coat of this, and basically the way that I do this is, I'm not ready to spray this yet, but I'll put a couple drops of this in a cup, and then I use window cleaner, and this is invisible glass window cleaner because it has no dye to it, you can see. But it does a real good job. People have talked about using denatured alcohol on that, and that's fine. But I've gotten pretty used to using the window cleaner. I know pretty much how to mix this. I just put a couple drops in. I'll add a drop or two of the window cleaner, mix it, see how the consistency is in it. And once I get it to the consistency that I want to spray through my airbrush, I'll go ahead out and I'll put a coat of brown on this, and I'll let that dry. And then what I'll do is I'll come back and put a clear coat over that to protect it, and we'll move on to the next step. So I kind of want to go through this step by step and let you know how I'm doing my model, and other people have other ways of doing theirs. But in any case, I'm going to get to putting this brown iron oxide on, and we'll come back and we'll take a look at it. All right, so here we go. This is that first base coat of this ceram coat brown iron oxide. I really like using this color. as kind of an undercoat for the bird of prey, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some salt chipping. And when I do that salt chipping, it's going to reveal some of this brown. It's going to look like rust spots. So I really like using it. But because this is a craft paint, and I love using craft paints, Boyd over at Trekworks got me into this when I saw him using it. And it's kind of been my go-to. Is I like using craft paints because, one, they're easy to clean up. They're not toxic really. They're just, there's not a lot of fumes that come with using this stuff. So I can use it and I can bring this inside immediately from where I'm painting over in my shed, and I don't have the fumes that come with it. So, but what I am going to have to do, because this is a craft paint and it's water soluble, I guess you could say, basically I could take water and I can wash all this off right now. But that's one of the great things about it. If you make a mistake, you can always come back and it'll wash right off, a little toothbrush, and this craft paint will come right off. But because of that, salt chipping requires that I put water on this and then drop salt on it to create the chip effect that I'm going to use on this. So what I got to do is I've got to coat this with a clear coat to protect it. And I always use, again, something else that I got from Boyd over at Trekworks, this Duplicolor matte wheel matte clear coat. It's worked. If it sounds like I'm slurring my words, I promise you I haven't had any alcohol. I've got this Invisalign thing going in, and it's driving me nuts. So, but anyway, I use this clear coat. I'll coat these parts real good. I'll let these dry overnight, and then I'll come back tomorrow and I will do the salt, and I'll show you that part. I'll put some water, spray some water on here, drop a little bit of salt on it, let that dry, and then we'll come back over it with my I gotta find it, my olive drab paint that I'm using as the final coat or color for this. So give me a little bit. I'm gonna have to spray these and let them sit overnight, and we'll come back tomorrow and we will take a look at them. But for you, it's only going to be a couple seconds. Hang tight. All right, guys, so we've got this painted up in the brown iron oxide. I've got both wingtips and cannons painted up. And once I did that, because this is a craft paint, this is the Ceram Coat brown iron oxide. I like the way it looks on this because once I go over this with my top coat, which is going to be, or my final paint color, which is going to be this Anita's olive green. Once I do the salt chipping, which I'm about to talk about in a second here, that's going to look like rust spots where that salt comes off. So it's going to look really nice. It's how I weathered the bridge section of my bird of prey. So, and I like the way that turned out, so I'm going to do the same thing on this. And how I do that is basically I get a spray bottle. So I stole my wife's spray bottle. Mum is the word on that. And basically I come over and I spray a mist on this. Now this is why I had to clear coat this first, because if I did this without clear coating, I would risk that paint smudging or coming off in spots instead of staying where I wanted to. So in a bowl, I've got some ground. I actually get the grinder of sea salt. That way I can grind this down as much as I want to and apply it. Because on this bigger model, I want bigger chunks than what I would on the 1-350 because it's a larger scale. So basically I'll take the salt and I'll just kind of drop it on there. And I'm not worried about pieces that come off and deflect and don't stay on there because I want it to be random. So I'm basically taking this salt and I'll just drop it on here in spots, and where it sticks is where we're going to get our chipping effect at. And I'll go back and kind of sweep up some of the stuff and reuse what ends up on the table. No sense wasting salt. Alright. But I usually just do enough to where I think it's going to look good when I chip it. I don't want it to look too beat up, but it is a bird of prey, so we don't want it to be, or at least I don't want mine to be clean looking. I want it to be rather worn looking and like it's seen battle maybe a couple times. So I'll get one side done and we'll flip it over and we'll do the same thing on this side. Spray some water on. And then same thing, come back over it with the salt. And we'll just drop it on there and let it land where it may. Get a little bit more on this lower section here. Okay, so I think we're good there. So what I'll do is I'll set this up to where I don't have to worry too much about all that salt getting knocked off, but that's going to have to dry for a while. You can use a hair dryer and get it to dry a little bit quicker. I may do that, but typically, even when I do that, I still like to let it sit for a bit and let that water. It's got to be completely dry before you start. Before you go to add that second coat of paint. So same thing on this one. Just going to drop it. And if you hear a noise in the background, it's my cats going through the dish cabinet that I left open like an idiot. So I'm going to have to take care of that in a minute. But I'll get this salt on here first. All right, and do the same thing on this other side. I'm realizing I've got my soundboard sitting out and I just got sprayed on it, so I have to make sure I dry that off real good before I try to use it. And let's add the salt to this one. Again, for some reason I keep missing this bottom part here. All right, so we got that one all salted up, and how much chipping you want is up to you. I like some chipping, but I don't want to overdo it. So because I'm going to come back in with some different kind of thinned out paints anyway, and kind of work on doing some more weathering to it. So I also did the top of the whole section here, so I'm going to go ahead and get that salted so that can start to dry. I can start working on that as well. Okay. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to put down some paper towels or a towel or something under this to catch all that water. I always seem to neglect to do that when I do this part. Yeah, see, that's more than what I want on there. All right, so I've got that salted, and I'll let that dry for a bit, and we'll come back and we'll take a look at putting that second. What I'll do is, once that dries, I'll go ahead and put that second coat on, that coat of my olive green, and let that dry, and we'll come back and I'll show you how to remove the salt. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so while I'm waiting for those parts to dry, I tinkering around with my lighting effect for the Photon up front here, and it has the two bulbs. Well, actually, I should have showed you the lighting kit in this video, but I've already done a separate review of the lighting kit. But there's two bulbs for the Photon firing effect. One right now is a red bulb, but I'm going to change that to yellow because to me it looks more like when you see there's kind of an aura around the photon emitter before the green flash and the photon is fired. And to me it looks more yellow instead of red. So I'm going to change that bulb. Right now it's still red, but I'm going to change that to yellow. And then you get the pulse of the green pulse where the photon is fired more out of the center. So I printed up the part the way it was intended, which is the solid gray resin. And I didn't like it, just wasn't given the aura. You didn't get the aura around it. So what I ended up doing was printing it in clear. And that way I can control. What I'll do is I'll mask off the bottom half of this, the back half of this, and I'll black out the whole front. That way I can get that flash, that aura effect from around the back end here, and you'll see that. And the other thing I did too was to make it easier to mount my bulbs and to get a little more diffusion. I made this piece in Tinkercad, and basically what it lets me do is this hole here, I can insert the green 3mm bulb all the way through, and it'll stick out the front here. It'll seat right in the front. And additionally, for the other bulb, which is going to be yellow for the aura effect, I've got this 3mm hole here which it will mount into, and that will light up this whole piece. So that way I get a nice aura effect, or at least that's the plan. But basically I made it so this piece, let's see if I can get it to slide in here. And now I'll dry it up. It doesn't want to slide, but I don't want to push it in there because I want to be able to, I don't want it to get stuck in there. But basically this piece slides into the photon emitter. So I've got it mocked up here. Let me turn this light out and we'll see what it looks like. And you can see my red ring there. Now the background, you see the red in the middle. You won't see that when it's done because I'll black out the back side of that. But like this is just a quick mock-up to kind of give you an idea what I'm looking at here. So let's fire this. And it does overexpose that light, that LED. You don't see it quite as much, the pinpoint of the LED in person as you do on camera. But you see how you get that nice glow out of it now. And I really like the way that looks. So I'm pleased with that. Like I said, that red effect that you see there where it ramps up at first will be yellow. And then you'll get that green fire, that green flash. So I like the way that looks. I'm happy with that. So that's what I'm going to do. But that's what I worked out for that. Just want to show you guys that real quick. And see what your thoughts are on it. But anyway, I'm going to get back to working on those parts. They should be about dry. So I'm going to put my final coat of this olive green on, and we will come back and look at chipping off that salt. Stay tuned. All right, guys, so I've got this all painted up, and you see I had to mask off and do a couple different colors on here. I did the wrong panel on this one. I meant to do this one. I might go back and fix it, but my salt's already been peeled off of there because of the tape, so I might not worry about it. It's no big deal. But basically the way that I remove the salt is I get a brush and get one with this wider bristle. This is the only one I had left at the moment. I gotta get some more brushes, but get a brush that's got a wide bristle on it and just come through, and where you see all the salt, just gonna come through and use the brush to take all that salt off now. And if there's a spot where you need to get into a groove, you can use, I've got my little pick here. There's a piece of salt right there that wouldn't come out, and another one there. But now I'm just going to go around here and remove the salt. Some of these pieces get a little stubborn, so I'll come in with my pick just to kind of loosen it. Especially if you've had to do a couple different coats and you got some different layers going on here, the salt might be a little harder to get it to come off. But basically just go around and brush all that salt off, and it will reveal. Now, the salt chipping actually does two things. One, it when you chip it off, it reveals some of the paint that's left below, which is that brown iron oxide. But it also does some streaking in some places to give it kind of a different weather effect. And so it does a real good job just by doing the salt chipping itself at leaving a good weathering on this. But this is going to take a while to do. I'm not going to sit here and do all of it. I think I got enough here to kind of give you an idea. Let me focus this a little bit. But you can see some of the chips it's taken off the paint, and then some of the other This has just got to be cleaned up a little bit more. But some of the other weathering does some streaking on it, and gives it a nice start to your weathering on this, chipping on the front. So, but that's basically what I do with these. I'll come in and do the salt chipping, then I'll come back in, and I'm going to mix up some different washes, and I'll come back and show you my final step that I do, which is pretty much just coming back in with some thinned out washes and just doing some brushing and adding a couple little some streaking details and things like that. So give me a couple minutes and we'll come back and take a look at it. I got these all painted up. I got the top of the secondary hull or engineering hull painted up with its different tones, and you can see I've already started doing some weathering on this. Get this to zoom. There we go. Okay, so you can see how I've started weathering this, and what I do is I pull up images of the studio model and just kind of try to mimic as much as possible the weathering that they've got on there. So that's what you're seeing on here. I've tried to do it as close as possible to it. I still got a little more work to do on it. I'll come back through and paint some different little details. I'll add some aluminum and some silver coloring to just a few little spots. The bird of prey just doesn't have a whole lot of shiny things on it. So, but one thing I like to do is I like to make up a black wash and thin it out real well, and I also make up this kind of brownish wash, which I make up using the using the brown iron oxide, 2 drops of that, and then I usually use like a drop of this Pueblo to give it a little bit of a lighter color. And that's what I use for the rust, kind of the rust look here. I don't know if it's coming up on camera. I try not to go real thick with it, but I do them real thin. That way I can just kind of build up on it. The one thing I didn't do this that I usually do is usually I put a clear coat over it first, and then I'll go in to do the weathering, which I didn't do this time, but it's okay. I'm kind of have a pretty good taste for how I like to do the weathering on this, so I'm not too worried about it. What the clear coat does is that lets you, especially at least with these acrylic paints, these craft paints, if I put a clear coat on it and I do weathering and I don't like something, I can come back with a Q-tip with some water and just take it off and start over. So that's why I recommend doing a clear coat and then start doing your weathering. Also, it keeps the paints from doing any mixing, but haven't really had a problem with that on this stage. So I'll make sure on my other stages, though, I did paint up the wingtip cannons. So those are painted up here. And you can see that color does get a little bit darker once you put the clear coat on it. So it'll darken it up a little bit. But then what I'll do is I'll come back on this. The wingtips don't really get a whole lot of, from what I can see from the studio model, don't get a whole lot of different variations. Like you got the green and the gray on most of the other rest of the ship. But I think it looks like there's maybe a little bit of red, or maybe it's just a rust type color underneath. But I'll come in and do some weathering to it and get it looking more presentable. So, but that's wingtip. You can see the chip effect, though. Some of these chips on here from doing the salt chip method. So you can see how that effect looks on there. But I like using that. It's a real easy technique to use, and inexpensive, and it's not real hard to do. So give it a try if you haven't yet. But I'll just come in with, I've got 3 different size brushes here. The different things I do is I'll take this fine tip brush, and I'll do kind of like a pin drop on it. I'll come into some of these little areas like these seams here and just run my brush with a little bit of black on it. And then what I'll use the bigger brush for is like larger areas where I want to get a larger blob of, not necessarily a blob, but a larger amount of the wash on there. And then I'll come back in, like for instance, I use this one to do this top part here, and just get just a little bit of this brown, this rust around it, which is how it appears on the studio model in the photos I've got. And I'll just do that around that leading edge there. Maybe trail it off a little bit here. And then for this larger brush, what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll dab it off, and I'll come in and just do some not brushing, but just some blotches on here, just to kind of tone this green paint down a little bit. But that'll drop pretty good. You can see where I did that on the front edge right here. So that's pretty much the way I do my weathering. I'll use these 3 brushes and pretty much just these 2 types of these 2 washes here, and that's it. And I'll go through everything. I've got my my neck painted up now. I've got to add those other parts on that the Photon tube, I believe it is, that goes on the underside here. I've left this open. I'm going to try to use magnets or something to hold this closed, so that way if I need to do any work on the inside of the bridge here, I can just pop it off still, versus gluing this down. But we'll see how it goes. But so I've got my neck, if I can get in there we go, pretty much in place. I'll come in, I'll do some weathering in here as well, all over it, and it'll be good to go. So that's pretty much what I'm going to be working on for a while here. Again, it's going to be a little bit before I get another video up, because I do have traveling that I do between here and typically Denver. So I'll be out of town for a little bit, and then I'll come back and do some more work on this. And when we come back, hopefully we will be ready to start actually putting in the lighting, at least on the bridge section, start lighting that up. And then we'll start getting these slats in place for the wings on the secondary hull. So, and that's what I'll be working on as well. I got these wings. I've got this major seam line here that I'm gradually working on. So hopefully I'll get a bigger printer, get the M3 Max from Anycubic, and I won't have to split those up anymore. It'll be a lot easier. So, but anyway, guys, I appreciate everybody for watching. I appreciate everybody for the support and the feedback I get. And again, thank you. Please, if you haven't already and you enjoy or you get any use out of anything in here, give me a thumbs up, or hit that like button below. And please also hit that subscribe button too if you get any use out of this information. So again, guys, please go visit my my comrade in arms there, Cass over at Lake Monster Details, and Gus over at GCals, and give them a little love. So anyway, guys, thank you again. Till next time, keep modeling.